Super thrilled to welcome to the show Sam Machkovech, culture reporter for Ars Technica. How's it going, Sam?
It's going well. How's it going, everybody?
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking about just kind of gaming in general. Sometimes I feel like gaming doesn't get talked about a lot, at least on the TWiT network, on some of the other shows. So you and I thought, hey, let's get some more gaming on here. So it's great to have you on here to talk about that stuff. Of course, some of these topics we have discussed a little bit, but I'm curious to get your take on it. Obviously, we've heard a ton about VR this week, virtual reality, and the news keeps happening. Apparently, the founder of Oculus apologized about how they communicated the Rift price. What's that all about, Sam?
So Oculus Rift has been advertised in one way or another for years. And Palmer Luckey, the creator of Oculus Rift, has always been pretty forthright on social media and in interviews. He's always been kind of a no-nonsense guy and has always sort of tempered expectations for a price that was close to the $350 mark. So when the pre-orders went live this week at a price of $600 a pop, he pretty quickly ate crow by way of a Reddit Ask Me Anything. Talked about messaging poorly, explained how they're not going to make a single dollar on any of these Oculus Rift units that are sold. By the way, you can see his shining, beautiful body and face right there in that awful time cover.
I remember that one.
But he did, after the price went out and people complained, he did a really good job, honestly, of getting ahead of any further complaints, saying that it was his fault, saying that he could have tempered expectations better. Even went so far as to talk about there's a controller, an add-on called Oculus Touch that's going to come out supposedly sometime this year. And he will no longer even become close to predicting the price of that. He said, I've learned my lesson.
Now, okay, so I'm really looking forward to the Oculus Rift. I've made no bones about that on this show the last couple of days. I'm also really looking forward to the HTC Vive. And we talked a little bit earlier this week about the Vive Pre. What's your take on that?
The Vive Pre, I wonder ultimately how it's going to turn out. I was not at CES. I will hopefully get to try out the Vive Pre pretty soon. What it does is it adds something on a base level that no other major virtual reality set has even come close to teasing, which is the ability to see the surrounding world without having to take off your headset. That is no small selling point for people who are terrified of virtual reality, who are terrified of looking like that guy on the screen right there with a helmet on your face, and you might bump into something. And with the Vive, that's doubly important because this is the system where you are expected to walk around. Get out of the chair, walk around a preset room. You can sit at a desk if you want, but a lot of the apps are going to be designed for moving around a walking space. So the idea that you could at any point flip a switch and see a little bit of your reality, perhaps if you have a cat, this could be a deal breaker, that you do not kill your cat while playing with virtual reality. So
Don't want to do that.
But the other issue that hasn't really been answered as far as I'm concerned is comfort. Oculus Rift has the most comfortable set yet. I think when they talk about that $600 price point, they're really not whistling Dixie about getting that price to give you something comfortable. It is the least in terms of weight, heaviness, and bulk, and also in terms of air getting through, airflow. These aren't small things if you're putting a headset on. And the Vive is a little heavier. The Vive does not have quite that same structure to keep on your head in that way. I've never tested any of these headsets for more than 30 minutes at a time. Once people own them, I think that's going to be a much bigger talking point. Oculus has the lead on that. The Pre doesn't necessarily, but they've done everything else they need to, especially with that webcam, to give them sort of a leg up and say, you aren't going to need to get an upgrade in 6 months for certain things that are going to really matter.
Sure, sure. And one kind of VR solution that we're not hearing a lot about, actually, Tabrez wrote in and said, hey guys, great show. I know VR is huge about now, but I hardly hear you talking about PlayStation VR, which seems to be the closest to release. When is that releasing, and what can you tell us about that?
So no release date has been set. That's going to be the first half of this year, supposedly. In fact, until any of these come out, we really don't know. What I can say is that I was lucky enough to head to the PlayStation Experience Expo in San Francisco in December, where they had a ton of PlayStation VR. You can see me there looking super cool. It's definitely likely to be the most affordable because you don't need a $1,000 computer, give or take.
Yeah.
You're going to potentially be able to buy a $350 gaming machine, which is pretty powerful, and attach a headset. Now, whatever they price the PlayStation VR at is another story. But it works. It works with the webcam that's already out. It works with the PlayStation Move wands, which are already out. So you may be able to get away with that at $800 grand total for the system and the headset combined. We don't know if that'll even happen. The main thing is that the headset is also going to come with a special dongle, which may add extra processing power, which may add to the cost. That's really an unknown. Sony hasn't come ahead of predicting anything price-wise. But I think there's a much better chance of that one getting into more homes because of the fact that it's a game system. There's just a certain cachet to that that nothing else on the market currently has, not even the Gear VR, in my opinion.
Well, so the Oculus Rift is really for people who are early adopters. They're really into it. And is the place, I mean, are there a lot of people that are just going to get both? I mean, are people having to make the decision, do I want the PlayStation VR, do I want the Oculus? Or is that the decision, or do you think a lot of these people are early adopters that want everything?
I mean, I'm sure there are going to be some rich kids who get every single thing, and kind of like the kid who had a Neo Geo in the early 90s, who I was really jealous of.
Yes,
that thing
I was jealous of that kid too.
But there's ultimately going to be a very weird distribution of who buys this stuff because we don't know how many are going to get made. We don't really know the price point of what HTC and what Sony are doing. So it's honestly going to come down to what comes out both hardware and software-wise. You know, if you come out with a VR system and you don't have a bazillion games or a bazillion good games, then that changes everything. There are going to be people who buy everything no matter what, but that's not a market. That's just a dip. You know, these companies, Facebook in particular, wants to essentially be this thing that you think of VR as Oculus for the next 10 or 15 years. So this is the first step. This is losing money now in order to have the name out there. HTC is in a weird spot because they are losing money. They just had yet another monthly report of finances, and they are not doing well. We've actually put them in our Ars Technica death watch list for this year because their phones haven't been doing well. They're betting a lot on VR. So who even knows if HTC will make it to the end of the year in terms of producing headsets? There's a lot of question marks about what is really going to emerge and how many people are going to buy.
But man, there's a lot of solutions coming out this very year, so we're going to find a lot. I mean, this is a crazy year for VR. It's kind of moving on and speaking to what you were talking about as far as like lots of great games. Ars Technica picked out some of the best video games of 2015. The editors, of course, you have your opinions. What are a couple of those?
So it's always a big battle when we are asked to do any sort of list. Our comment sections in the public aren't even as bad as the email threads we have privately at Ars Technica. But we had to whittle down to 20 games. We were able to narrowly get a consensus on the game Rocket League. Rocket League is my personal pick for best of the year. That is Cars meets soccer. There's a bit of a, oh God, what is that show that's on the BBC with cars? You know what I'm talking about. Top Gear. There was sort of a Top Gear thing where cars bumped into giant soccer balls. And that, as a video game, has been my favorite esport, my favorite multiplayer game. Really exciting. We had a lot of people who were really huge into Fallout 4 who swore that was their best game of the year. I disagreed. I said so at length in a review a while back. Other favorites I had, Downwell is on the screen right now, which is a iOS and hopefully one day Android jumping around game. Very simple to use a touchscreen in order to jump around in this very action-y, falling all the time, shooting stuff, bumping into stuff. It's just, even though if you're tired of retro aesthetics, don't worry about it. It's totally worth buying into. It's a very, very good 2 minutes to 2 hours kind of mobile game.
Has like a Metroid quality to it too.
It is really, really cool, and there's a lot of little fun, tricky stuff for that sort of quick, tappy, actiony sort of game. And Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. There are a few staffers that love that. I did in particular. That's the one where one player looks at a screen, the other player looks at an old instruction manual, and they don't see what the other person sees. So they have to talk to each other, looking at different things to defuse a bomb within a certain amount of time. So the person looking at the screen will have some gibberish. The person looking at the book will go, oh, that gibberish means X, Y, and Z. It's a lot of back and forth. It will break up a marriage if your marriage is not quite solid. So that is my one warning. But other than that, that one's really fun. The list has a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of mix of the big budget stuff like Just Cause and Tomb Raider, and some of the smaller fry things like Her Story and Undertale. 2015, as ever, has been a really good year for a giant range of games. I've been really fortunate to play a ton of them on Ars Technica's dime. So thanks a lot, Ars, for that.
Nice. It's too bad that it's your job to play games and talk about them and write about them. It's actually not too bad because we get you on the show as a result. So thank you so much for coming on, Sam Machkovech. Tell people kind of what you're working on now, where people should go to find exactly your work, the stuff that you're doing right now.
Well, arstechnica.com has everything you need to see. On Monday, I'm going to have a review of a game, as it were, called That Dragon Cancer. I won't call it fun, but it is gorgeous. It is compelling. It is sad. There's actually there are a lot of stories this past week, including the latest episode of Radiolab talks to the creators of that. I'll have my review up there at arstechnica.com on Monday. And I'll be happy to talk about that at length next week if I can keep my eyes dry. It's incredible.
Right on, Sam. We really appreciate having you on. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Sam.
it. See you guys.
All right. See you later, man.